The snow fell hard over Incheon that night. Not the gentle kind that looks pretty in photos. This snow was heavy and sharp, driven sideways by the wind. It coated the streets in white and turned the sidewalks into traps. Streetlights flickered through the storm, their yellow glow shaking like they might give up at any moment. Most shops were closed. Most people were already home, wrapped in warmth, far away from the cold. But Maya Carter was still inside an office building, standing on her feet when they no longer wanted to hold her up. Her eyes burned. Her stomach was empty. Her head felt thick, like it was stuffed with cotton. She had been working for 13 hours straight without a real break. The thin coat on her body was still damp from the rain earlier that morning, the fabric cold against her skin. Every movement felt slow. Every breath felt heavier than the last. She stood in front of her boss's desk, fighting the urge to sway. Graham Whitlock didn't notice. Or maybe he did and simply didn't care. He stood behind his desk, clean and dry, his office warm and bright. The window behind him showed the storm outside, but it might as well have been another world. He didn't look at Maya's face. He didn't ask if she was okay. He didn't even lower his voice. He grabbed a clipboard from his desk and shoved it into her hands. "Fix the delivery now," he said flatly. "Or don't bother coming back tomorrow." The words landed hard. Maya's fingers tightened around the clipboard. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed again. 100 thoughts rushed through her mind. She wanted to argue. She wanted to explain that she had already done everything she could. She wanted to tell him she was tired, that she hadn't eaten, that the roads were dangerous. But none of that mattered. This job was all she had. Rent, food, survival. All of it depended on this place and this man. So she swallowed every word she wanted to say and nodded once. "Okay," she said quietly. Graham was already looking away. Maya turned and walked out of the office. Her steps were slow as she crossed the hallway. The heat faded with every meter she moved. By the time she reached the exit, the cold had already found her bones. She pushed the door open. The blizzard hit her like a wall. The wind slammed into her face, stealing her breath. Snow rushed into her eyes, her hair, her coat. The cold was instant and cruel, crawling under her clothes like fingers. Her shoes sank into the snow almost immediately, the white rising past her ankles in seconds. She took one step, then another. The city felt empty. The sound of the storm swallowed everything else. Her fingers began to sting, then burn, then go numb. She tried to adjust her grip on the clipboard, but her hands didn't respond the way they should have. Her legs shook. She kept walking. Every step felt heavier than the last. The wind pushed her back, as if the night itself was trying to send her away. Her coat did nothing against the cold. The damp fabric clung to her skin, stealing what little warmth she had left. She made it halfway down the block. Then her body gave up. Her knee buckled first, then the other. She stumbled forward and went down hard, her shoulder hitting the icy pavement. Pain shot through her side, sharp and fast, but it barely registered. The cold was louder than pain. She lay there, face turned toward the ground, her breath coming out in weak, broken clouds. Snow settled over her hair and her back. Her fingers were still curled tightly around the clipboard, like letting go would mean something worse than the cold. Her vision blurred. Up in the building behind her, a light flicked on. Graham Whitlock stood by the window, looking down at the street. He saw her shape on the ground. He saw that she wasn't moving. He didn't open the door. He didn't call her name. After a few seconds, he turned away. The light went out. Maya didn't see it. The storm swallowed everything. At the corner of the street, a black sedan slowed and came to a stop. Its engine hummed softly under the noise of the wind. The headlights cut through the snow, throwing white light across the road. The back door opened. A man stepped out. Kang Junho stood still for half a second, the cold biting at his face. Snow landed on his dark hair and coat, melting and freezing all at once. His eyes were already locked on the figure in the street, on the woman lying in the snow. His jaw tightened. His body moved before thought could catch up. He took one step forward, then another. The storm raged around him, but he didn't slow down. His gaze never left her as he moved into the blizzard, toward the woman who had collapsed in the cold. Junho was out of the car before his driver could speak. The door shut behind him with a dull sound that vanished into the storm. Snow struck his face immediately, sharp and cold, but he didn't react. He didn't feel it. His eyes were fixed on the shape lying in the street ahead of him, half covered in white. He crossed the distance in 4 steps. His shoes sank into the snow, but he didn't slow. When he reached her, he dropped to his knees beside her without hesitation, the ice soaking through his trousers. The world narrowed to the woman in front of him. Maya. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't shake her. He leaned close, scanning her face with a speed that came from long habit. Her lips were pale, almost blue. Her body trembled violently, not from fear, but from cold so deep it had taken over. Her eyelashes were wet with melting snow. One hand lay twisted under her chest. The other was curled tightly around a clipboard, her fingers locked as if they no longer knew how to let go. Junho reached for her without thinking. He shrugged out of his coat in one sharp movement and wrapped it around her shoulders and back, pulling the heavy fabric close to her body. His hands were steady, but his chest felt tight as he felt how cold she was through the layers of cloth. "Stay with me," he murmured, though he didn't know if she could hear him. He slid one arm carefully under her knees and the other behind her back and lifted her from the ground. She weighed less than he remembered. The thought hit him harder than it should have. It settled somewhere deep in his chest and stayed there, heavy and unwelcome. There was no time to examine it. He held her closer and stood. The rear door of the car was already open. His guard had moved without being told, stepping aside to give him space. Junho slid into the back seat, keeping Maya against him, her head resting weakly against his chest. The door closed. The noise of the storm faded slightly. "Home," Junho said. His voice was calm. His hands were not. The car pulled away from the curb and cut through the snow-covered streets. Inside the vehicle, the heater began to work, warm air slowly filling the space. Junho didn't shift. He didn't set her down. He held her exactly where she was, one arm firm around her back, the other supporting her legs. He watched her breathe. Her breaths were shallow, uneven. He counted the seconds between them without realizing he was doing it. 1, 2, 3. Every time she exhaled, he felt a small release. Every pause made his jaw tighten. He had forgotten how to pray a long time ago. If he still knew how, this would have been it. The drive took 31 minutes. The city passed outside the windows in blurred lights and falling snow. Incheon moved quietly around them, unaware of what was happening inside the car. Junho didn't look away from her once. When they arrived, the car pulled into the underground entrance of the building. The doors opened, and warm air rushed in. The staff froze when they saw him. They had seen Junho carry men through these doors before. Men with blood on their shirts. Men barely breathing. Allies who had survived things most people never would. They had never seen him carry a woman, and they had never seen that look on his face. No one spoke. No one asked questions. They moved quickly, clearing the way, opening doors, pressing buttons. The elevator rose in silence. Junho carried Maya down the hallway and into the guest room. He laid her gently on the bed, arranging her as carefully as if she were made of glass. The sheets were clean and white. He pulled them over her and stepped back only long enough to turn the heater higher. "Doctor," he said. Someone was already making the call. The doctor arrived within minutes. Dr. Han Sung-woo moved with quiet confidence, his expression calm and focused. He checked Maya's pulse, listened to her breathing, examined her hands and face. He worked quickly but gently, warming her fingers with heated towels, adjusting the blankets, checking her temperature again. "She has early hypothermia," the doctor said after a moment. "But you brought her in time. She'll be fine by morning." Junho nodded once. The doctor gave a few more instructions, then left without asking questions. He knew better. The room grew quiet again. Junho pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. He leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on his knees, his eyes never leaving her face. Hours passed. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, snow continued to fall. The city glowed beneath it, lights reflecting off white streets and dark water. Incheon looked distant and untouchable, like a kingdom he had claimed without ever enjoying. He watched Maya sleep. Her breathing slowly evened out. Color returned faintly to her lips. Every small change eased something inside him, though the tightness never fully left. He did not leave his seat. Near dawn, without warning, Maya's eyes flew open. She gasped sharply, her body jerking upright, panic flashing across her face as she sucked in air and looked around the room. The silence shattered. Her breathing came fast and uneven, fear written into every movement as she woke in a place she did not recognize. Maya's eyes flew open. She sucked in a sharp breath and sat up too fast, her chest rising and falling like she had been pulled from deep water. Her heart hammered as she looked around the room, trying to understand where she was. The ceiling was unfamiliar. The light was soft. The air was warm. This was not her apartment. Panic rose instantly. She threw the blanket aside and swung her legs over the edge of the bed, ready to run. That was when she saw him. Kang Junho sat in a chair beside the bed. For a second, her mind refused to accept it. Her eyes went wide, then slowly narrowed. Shock turned into something sharper, something darker. Fury mixed with fear, and a pain so old it felt carved into her bones. "No," she whispered. She pushed herself up, but the room tilted. Her legs gave way beneath her, and she grabbed the edge of the nightstand to keep from falling. "Don't," she said, her voice shaking. "Don't say my name like that." Junho did not move. He did not reach for her. He stayed where he was, watching her carefully, as if one wrong move might make her break. "Why am I here?" she demanded. "Because you were dying in the snow," he answered quietly. Her jaw tightened. "Then you should have kept driving." The words landed between them like a slap. Junho's face did not change, but something in his eyes shifted. He leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. "I almost did," he said. "But I've made that mistake before." Maya laughed, sharp and bitter. She tried to stand again, stubbornness pushing her forward even as her body protested. "I'm leaving," she said. "It's 4 a.m, Junho replied. "There's a blizzard outside. You were hypothermic 2 hours ago." "I don't care." "Sit down, Maya." "I don't sit down." His voice dropped. It wasn't louder. It wasn't angry. It was calm and controlled, the kind of voice that made rooms go silent. The kind of voice that once made powerful men reconsider their choices. Maya hated that it still worked. Her legs shook again, and this time she had no strength left to fight it. She sank back onto the edge of the bed, gripping the mattress with both hands. Silence stretched between them. She sat stiff and tense, shoulders drawn up, eyes fixed on the floor. She looked like a woman backed into a corner, ready to bolt or bite depending on which came first. Junho studied her for a moment before speaking again. "Why were you outside tonight?" he asked. She didn't answer. "Maya," he said gently but firmly, "you were lying in the snow with no protection, in a part of the city you had no reason to be in at that hour. So I'm asking you again, why were you there?" She exhaled through her nose, slow and controlled. Her eyes burned, but no tears fell. "My boss," she said at last. Junho waited. "He sent me out," she continued. "There was a delivery problem. Something went wrong for a client event tomorrow. He said if I didn't fix it, I was finished." She let out a short, humorless laugh. "He didn't even give me cab fare. Just shoved a clipboard into my hands and pointed at the door." Junho's posture didn't change, but something behind his eyes went very still. "He watched me leave," Maya said. Her voice had flattened, like she was repeating a story she had told herself too many times. "He stood by the window and watched me walk into the snow." She swallowed. This wasn't the first time. Junho's fingers curled slowly against his knee. "What do you mean?" he asked. "He's been doing this for months," she said. "Sending me on impossible errands. Cutting my hours, then blaming me for not finishing work. Screaming at me in front of clients. Making sure everyone knows I'm disposable." She paused, her grip on the mattress tightening. "Last week, he made me stand outside for 41 minutes because I brought him the wrong coffee. I stood there holding a tray until he decided I'd learned my lesson. The room was warm, but the air felt cold." "What is his name?" Junho asked. "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." Maya looked away. She had almost said it then. Almost called Junho something she no longer had the right to call him. Almost let the old words slip out. She stopped herself. That was the point of leaving. That was why she had gone away and rebuilt herself. She was not his anything. "You're staying here tonight," Junho said after a moment. "Tomorrow, I'll have someone bring your things." "I'm not staying with you," she said quickly. "You're not going back to that man either. You don't get to decide that." Junho stood. He walked to the window and looked out over the sleeping city. Snow continued to fall, softer now, covering everything in white. He pressed one hand against the glass, then turned back to her. His face was calm. His eyes were not. "He will never send you into the cold again," he said quietly. It wasn't a threat. It was a fact. Maya didn't respond. She lay back against the pillows, staring up at the unfamiliar ceiling. The silk sheets felt wrong against her skin. The heater hummed softly in the background. She did not sleep. Her mind drifted despite herself, pulled backward by memory. She remembered a small cafe. A quiet man in a black suit. Black coffee ordered in a low voice. She remembered the first time she looked up from her papers and caught him watching her, and how, without knowing it, everything had begun right there. Maya remembered the beginning clearly. She had been 23 years old, standing at the edge of a life she hadn't yet decided how to live. She had come to Incheon to teach English because she wanted something different, something loud, something uncertain. She told herself she wanted adventure, even though she didn't yet understand how close adventure lived to danger. The cafe was small and quiet, tucked between taller buildings. She used to sit there in the afternoons grading papers, her bag at her feet, her mind half lost between lesson plans and dreams she hadn't named yet. That was where she first saw him. Kang Junho walked in wearing a black suit that looked too sharp for a place like that. He didn't smile. He didn't scan the room. His eyes were dark and focused, like a man who never wasted attention. He ordered black coffee. He sat alone. He didn't look at her at first. But the next day he came back. And the day after that. Always the same order. Always the same seat. Always quiet. After 2 weeks, she finally looked up from her papers and caught him watching her. "Are you going to talk to me?" she asked. "Or just keep staring?" For a second, she thought she had made a mistake. Then the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Not quite a smile. Almost one. And that almost was enough. What followed burned fast and bright. They spent 7 months moving through a version of the city Maya had never seen before. Rooftops above glowing streets. Restaurants with no signs and no menus. Rooms where conversations stopped when he entered and men nodded without being told to. She thought he was a businessman. Important. Powerful. But still normal enough to love. That illusion lasted until it didn't. By the time she understood what he truly was, she was already too far gone. The danger wasn't his money or his influence. It was the way he softened when they were alone. The way he held her face like she was something fragile in a world that had taught him to be hard. He told her about his father. About inheriting something heavy before he was ready. About blood that no amount of success could wash away. She listened. She held those truths because she loved him. And because she believed love could carry anything. It couldn't. The night everything ended, she went to surprise him. She wasn't supposed to be there. She walked into the building just as the shouting started. Glass shattered. Men yelled in a language that turned sharp with panic. The air smelled like metal and fear. Gunfire cracked through the space. She froze. And then she saw him. Junho stood in the middle of it all, blood on his shirt, a gun in his hand. He looked at her once. Just once. And in that moment, she saw certainty settle into his face. He grabbed her arm hard enough to hurt and shoved her into a car. "Don't come back," he said. The door slammed shut. That was the last thing he ever said to her. He never called. He never explained. She waited longer than she should have. When nothing came, she packed her life into a suitcase and flew to Canada, where she rebuilt herself piece by piece over 3 years. She learned how to survive alone, how to breathe without expecting him to walk through a door. Eventually, she came back to Incheon. She told herself it was coincidence, that the city still felt like home, that she wasn't waiting for anything. But some small part of her had hoped he would see her and finally say he was sorry. He didn't. Until the snow. The morning after the rescue, Maya dressed quietly. Her movements were careful, controlled. She folded Junho's coat neatly and placed it on the chair, as if returning something borrowed. She reached the hallway before his voice stopped her. "Where are you going?" He stood at the far end, arms crossed, eyes sharp with sleeplessness. "Home," she said. "No." She turned to face him fully. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to throw me away and then hold on like nothing happened." His expression tightened. "You're right," he said. "I threw you away, and it was the worst thing I've ever done." She didn't look away. "But I'm not letting you walk back to that man," he continued. "That's not your choice." "Then make a better one," she said. Silence followed. In the end, she stayed. She told herself it was practical. Her apartment had no heat. Her body still ached from the cold. Leaving right now made no sense. None of that was entirely true. By the time the door closed behind her, Maya knew she was fully back inside his world again. Junho left early the next morning. Maya knew because she heard the quiet movement in the apartment before sunrise. The soft sound of shoes near the door. The low murmur of voices that stopped the moment she stirred. By the time she stepped into the kitchen, he was already gone. Everything else remained. Breakfast waited on the counter, untouched but warm. A driver stood outside the building, introduced to her politely and without explanation. Two guards took positions near the elevator, their presence calm but firm. No one asked her where she was going. No one questioned why she stayed. The message was clear. She was being protected and watched. As the hours passed, Maya began to notice things she hadn't seen at first. Small black cameras tucked into corners of the hallway. Men she didn't recognize standing near entrances, pretending to be nothing more than building staff. Doors that opened faster than they should have. Junho's world had eyes everywhere. She tried to ignore it. Tried to tell herself it was normal for someone like him. Still, the feeling settled in her chest, heavy and uneasy. By midday, she felt it. That strange tightening at the back of her neck. The same feeling animals get before a storm breaks. Outside, a black SUV sat across the street. It didn't move. It didn't park badly or draw attention. It simply stayed too long. Maya watched it from the window, pretending not to care. She had felt this before. Years ago. Back when Danger had worn expensive suits and polite smiles. Across the city, in Songdo, the first rumor was already moving. It began quietly in a restaurant with white tablecloths and low voices. One of Junho's lieutenants sat across from a man who owed money to people he didn't want to owe. The lieutenant spoke casually, as if mentioning the weather. "The boss brought a woman home," he said, sipping his drink. The man raised an eyebrow. "A woman. Foreigner," the lieutenant added. "Black. Beautiful." That was all. The man said nothing. But by the time he left the restaurant, the information was already working its way through the city, passed from mouth to mouth, softened and sharpened at the same time. By evening, the people who listened for weakness had heard. And one man smiled. Choi Min-suk sat in his office, rolling a coin slowly between his fingers as his subordinate spoke. The room was quiet, the walls thick, the windows dark. "A woman," Choi repeated. "Yes," the man said. "She stayed the night. At his residence." Choi leaned back in his chair. He had waited a long time for this kind of news. 21 years ago, Junho's father had destroyed his uncle's operation without mercy. Choi had never forgotten. He had simply waited. "Find out who she is," Choi said calmly. "Find out what she means to him." He paused, the coin stopping between his fingers. "And find out how much it would hurt him to lose her." Back at the penthouse, Maya felt the shift before she understood it. The air seemed heavier when Junho returned that evening. He moved the way he always did, quiet, controlled, but there was tension in his jaw, a tightness around his eyes that hadn't been there before. Something had happened. "People know I'm here," Maya said. It wasn't a question. Junho set his keys on the counter. "It's handled." "That's not what I asked," she replied. "If I'm the question, it concerns me." He looked at her then. Not sharply, not angrily, just long enough for her to see what lived beneath his calm. Anger. Not at her. At something bigger. Something moving just out of sight. "You're safe," he said. "You told me that 6 years ago, too." The room went quiet. Junho loosened his jacket and poured himself a drink, his movements careful, controlled. Maya watched him, reading the spaces between his actions. "This is different," he said at last. "How?" He met her eyes, and for just a second, the truth showed before he locked it away again. "Because this time," he said, "I'm not letting you leave." Maya felt it then. The tightening. The warning. The danger wasn't loud yet. It hadn't shown its teeth. But it was there, circling, paying attention. The city outside glowed as night fell over Songdo, unaware of the lines being drawn beneath its lights. And inside Junho's world, the pressure continued to build, slow and certain, like something preparing to strike. It didn't happen all at once. There were no grand speeches. No promises spoken out loud. No sudden forgiveness or dramatic change. What happened between Maya and Junho happened quietly, in pieces so small they almost felt harmless. It happened in moments. The first came early one morning. Maya stepped into the kitchen expecting silence. Instead, she stopped short in the doorway. Junho stood at the stove. He wasn't wearing a suit. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows. He was barefoot on the warm tile, cracking eggs into a pan with calm focus. Steam rose softly from a pot nearby. For a second, the image didn't make sense. This was not the man the city feared. This was not the man who moved through danger like it belonged to him. This was just a man making breakfast. "You don't have staff for that?" Maya asked before she could stop herself. Junho didn't turn around. "I sent them away," he said simply. "You don't like strangers." The The words landed harder than she expected. She hadn't realized he remembered that. It was something she had said once, years ago, in passing. Yet here it was, held and used with care. She sat at the counter without replying. A few minutes later, he placed a plate in front of her. Rice, eggs, soup, sliced fruit. Everything arranged neatly, thoughtfully, like someone had taken time instead of rushing through it. She ate. She ate every bite. And she hated how good it felt. 2 nights later, the second moment arrived. It was late. The apartment was dark except for a faint glow from the city outside. Maya had been half asleep on the couch when she heard the door open. Junho came in quietly and sat down without turning on the lights. Something felt wrong. She stood and walked closer. That was when she saw his hand. It was wrapped in cloth, already stained red. "You're bleeding," she said. "It's handled," he replied. She didn't argue. She didn't ask questions. She turned, went to the bathroom, and returned with the first aid kit. She sat beside him and gently unwrapped the cloth. The cut ran across his knuckles. Deep but clean. The kind of wound that came from force used carefully. She didn't ask who he hit. He didn't explain. She cleaned the wound slowly. Her hands were steady, practiced. She wrapped the bandage with quiet focus, just like she used to. Their fingers touched. Neither of them moved. Junho went very still. Not tense. Still in a way that suggested he was holding something back with effort. She finished tying the bandage and looked up. He was watching her. Not the way he watched threats. Not the way he watched rooms. He looked at her like someone reading something precious, afraid to miss a word. Her breath caught. For one terrible moment, she wanted to lift his hand and press her lips to his knuckles. To tell him everything she had never said. She pulled away instead. "You should be more careful," she said, standing up. "I know," he replied. But they both understood he wasn't talking about the cut. After that, the silences between them changed. They were no longer sharp or cold. They became heavy, full. Their fingers brushed when he poured her tea. She fell asleep reading one night and woke up with a blanket draped over her shoulders she didn't remember pulling there. He stood in her doorway to say good night and stayed 1 second too long. That second lingered in her chest for hours. 7 days after the snowstorm, Junho spoke again. "Come with me," he said. She turned from the window. "Where?" "Outside." She almost laughed. "You're joking." "I'm not. The last time I went outside in the snow, I nearly died." "I know," he said. "That's why we're going." She didn't understand, but something in his voice made her move. He opened the closet and pulled out a coat she had never seen before. Long black. Cashmere. Heavy enough to stop the cold completely. Her size. She stared at it. He held it open for her. She slipped her arms in. The fabric was warm and soft. It smelled new and faintly of him. He lifted her hair gently from beneath the collar. His fingers brushed the back of her neck, and a shiver ran through her that had nothing to do with temperature. He wrapped a thick gray scarf around her neck, tucking it carefully into the coat. "Now you're ready," he said. They walked through a side entrance and into the night. The cold kissed her face, but didn't reach her body. The coat held everything out. They walked side by side, not touching, matching each other's pace. They entered Harborview Park, where streetlights turned the snow a soft amber. Their footsteps crunched together. The city felt far away. A branch above them released a small shower of snow. It dusted Maya's shoulders. She looked up and smiled. It was small, brief, real. Junho saw it and looked away quickly, like it hurt to see something so beautiful. "Thank you," Maya said softly. "For the coat?" he asked. "It's just a coat." "No," she said. "It isn't." He looked at her. "No," he admitted. "It isn't." They walked back slowly, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Almost. That night, Maya lay awake in bed. The warmth felt too much. The silence felt loud. The walls she had built inside herself were cracking, piece by piece. She didn't know what would be left when they finally fell. She only knew she couldn't stop it anymore. It was the 10th night. Maya sat on the floor by the window with her knees pulled to her chest, watching the snow fall outside. The city below was quiet, wrapped in white and shadow. The glass was cold against her back. Her thoughts were loud. She hadn't slept properly since the walk in the park. Something inside her had shifted that night. A line she had drawn years ago was fading, and she didn't know how to redraw it. The walls she had built to survive were no longer solid. They were thinning, cracking under the weight of things she had never allowed herself to feel. She heard the knock. Soft. One knuckle. She didn't turn her head. She didn't need to. "It's open," she said. The door opened quietly. Junho stepped inside. He wasn't wearing a suit. He wasn't wearing anything sharp or armored. Just a black t-shirt and loose pants. His hair was slightly damp, like he had run a hand through it too many times. He looked more human than she remembered, and that scared her more than the version of him the city feared. He closed the door and sat on the floor across from her, his back against the opposite wall. There was space between them. Enough to breathe. Enough to run, if she needed to. For a long time, neither of them spoke. "I need to tell you something," he said finally. "Before this goes any further." Maya didn't answer right away. Her arms tightened around her legs. "You don't owe me anything," she said. Junho looked at her steadily. "I owe you everything." The words hung in the air. He exhaled slowly and lowered his gaze to his hands. "The night of the raid," he began. "When you came to that building, I didn't send you away because I was angry." Maya's breath caught. "I sent you away because they were coming for you." She looked at him sharply. "Who?" she asked. "Choi Min-suk's men," he said. "They had been watching us for weeks. They knew about you." Her fingers curled against her sleeves. "They had photos," he continued. "You walking to the cafe, sitting in the park, sleeping in my bed. They put one on my desk before the shooting started." Her chest tightened until it hurt. "They were going to take you," he said quietly. "Use you. Destroy you. To destroy me." The room felt smaller. "I had two choices," Junho went on. "Keep you close and let them hunt you, or push you so far away that they would believe you meant nothing to me." He lifted his eyes to hers. "So I chose." Maya's voice shook. "You chose to hurt me. I chose to make you hate me," he said, "because your hatred kept you alive." Silence flooded the space between them. "You could have told me," she whispered. "If I told you," he replied, his voice breaking for the first time, "you would have stayed." "Yes, and they would have killed you." Her eyes burned. She pressed her palms flat against the floor to stop her hands from shaking. "You don't know that," she said weakly. "I do," he said. She looked up at him. "They killed my mother the same way," he said. "When I was 18. The words landed like a blow. "I watched it happen," he continued, "and I promised myself I would never let it happen again. Not to anyone I loved." A sound escaped Maya's throat. She covered her mouth, tears spilling freely now. "I'm sorry," Junho said. The words sounded heavy, like they had been waiting for years. "I'm sorry I stayed silent for 6 years. I'm sorry I let you believe you weren't enough." He swallowed hard. "You were everything, Maya. You were the only thing that ever made me want a life that didn't look like my father's." She shook as she cried. All those years, all that anger, all that pain built on the belief that she had been discarded because she wasn't worth fighting for. And now she understood. "I never stopped loving you," she said through tears. "And I hated myself for it every single day." Junho closed his eyes. "I know," he said softly, "because neither did I." They sat there on the floor, the truth between them, heavy and fragile at the same time. The air felt charged, like something had been healed without fully closing. The danger outside their walls had not disappeared. But for the first time in 6 years, the lie that had kept them apart was gone. And that changed everything. Junho did not rage. He did not make loud threats. He did not storm into offices with shouting men behind him. When Junho decided someone had crossed a line, he moved the way he always moved, quiet, controlled, and precise. Silent destruction. Maya saw it begin the next morning. She was still in the penthouse when alerts started popping up on her phone. At first, she thought it was random news. Then she saw the company name, Northline Logistics and Events. Her stomach tightened. She sat on the couch with her phone in both hands as the first wave hit. Day 1. 14 complaints were filed at once. Not 1. Not 2. 14. Unpaid overtime. Illegal deductions. Workplace endangerment. Labor violations that made her chest burn as she read them because every word matched what she had lived. And the filings didn't go to one place. They went to multiple agencies at the same time, like someone had aimed them carefully to make sure nothing could be ignored. A few hours later, another alert arrived. Company stock down. People online were asking questions. Colleagues in group chats were confused and panicked. Maya stared at the screen, expecting to feel relief. Instead, she felt anger. Not the explosive kind, the deep kind. The kind that built slowly year after year, while she stayed quiet and did what she had to do to survive. The kind that didn't disappear just because someone else was finally being punished. Day 2. A supplier ended a contract. Not a small supplier, one of the biggest. A luxury conglomerate that provided most of Northline's inventory. The notice was polite, clean, short, no argument, no chance to fix it. Just gone. Maya watched her former boss's world wobble through words on a screen. Still, the anger stayed. Day 3. The news shifted from rumors to something sharper. Evidence surfaced, documents, transactions, records that told a clear story. Money moved into offshore accounts. Invoices altered. Deposits redirected. 2 years of embezzlement laid out like a map. The report said the accounts were traced in 49 hours. Maya reread that line twice, stunned by the speed. By evening, there was talk of prosecutors. Warrants. Investigations. It felt unreal. Day 4. Northline collapsed in public. Phone calls unanswered. Partners backing away. Lawyers scrambling. Employees posting online like their building was sinking and they had just noticed the water. Her boss's name appeared in headlines. Maya stared at it, then locked her phone and sat in silence. Junho entered the room quietly, as if he had been there the whole time. She looked up at him. "I want to go there," she said. He didn't argue. He didn't tell her to stay behind him. He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded once. "You don't have to," he said. "I know," she answered. "I want to." He held out a set of keys. Maya took them. A few hours later, she walked into the Northline building for the last time. She wore the black cashmere coat Junho had given her. It hung perfectly on her shoulders. It made her feel warmer than fabric should have. Not because it was expensive, but because it felt like armor she didn't have to pretend was heavy. The lobby smelled the same. The lights were the same. But Maya was not. She moved through the hallway with steady steps, ignoring the stairs. People recognized her only after a second look, like they couldn't match the woman in front of them to the exhausted one they used to order around. When she entered Graham Whitlock's office, he was at his desk surrounded by lawyers and panic. Papers were stacked everywhere. His face looked gray, like the ground had fallen out from under him, and he still didn't know how. He looked up sharply. For a moment, he didn't recognize her. Then his eyes narrowed. "Maya," he said, like her name was a mistake. Maya stepped closer until she was directly in front of the desk. "You sent me out to die," she said, voice clear and steady. The room went silent. No one breathed. Even the lawyers froze. "You humiliated me," she continued. "You starved me. You made me believe I was nothing." Graham opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Maya reached into her pocket and placed her employee badge on the desk. "I quit." She turned and walked out. She didn't look back. She made it halfway to the car outside when the first gunshot shattered the window of the building across the street. The sound cracked through the air like lightning. Maya flinched, and then everything moved at once. The driver grabbed her and pulled her down hard behind a concrete divider. Glass rained onto the sidewalk. People screamed. More shots followed, sharp, precise, and aimed. Not at the building. At the black sedan parked near the curb. Junho's car. Maya's heart slammed against her ribs. Guards surged in. One hand pressed her head down. Another shielded her body. She was lifted and shoved toward an armored vehicle she hadn't even noticed. A piece of glass sliced her forehead. Blood ran down fast, warm against her skin, slipping into her eye. She blinked hard, but the red blur stayed. The door slammed. The vehicle sped away. By the time they reached the safe house near Gimpo, Maya's hands were shaking so badly she couldn't unclench them. Junho was already there. He reached her the second she stepped inside. His hands gripped her shoulders firmly, his eyes scanning her face, landing on the blood, the cut, the fear still stuck in her breathing. "Are you hurt?" he asked. His voice sounded broken. Not angry. Not cold. Afraid. "I'm fine," Maya managed. "It's just a cut." He didn't seem to hear her. He pulled her into his arms so tightly it knocked the air from her lungs. She felt his heartbeat against her cheek, fast and wild, like his control had cracked for the first time. "I can't do this twice," he whispered. "I can't lose you twice." Maya wrapped her arms around him and held on. This time, she didn't let go. They stayed in the safe house for 3 days. Locked doors. Armed guards. Quiet hallways. Junho on the phone constantly, speaking rapid Korean in a low voice. Maya couldn't understand the words, but she understood the meaning. He was at war. And it wasn't about money or territory. It was about her. On the third night, Junho ended a call and stood in the doorway, his face exhausted, the kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix. "It's done," he said. "Choi Min-suk has been dealt with. His operation is finished. You're safe." Maya nodded, but she could see there was more behind his eyes. "I've been thinking," he said slowly, "about what happens now." He sat beside her, leaving a small space between them like he was afraid to push too far. "I'm stepping back," he said. "Not out completely, but I'm restructuring, moving things into legitimate channels. It won't be clean. It will take time, but I'm choosing it." He looked down at his hands, then back at her. "I'm not asking you to stay," he said. "I'm telling you what I'm choosing, even if I have to build it alone." Maya's throat tightened. She closed her eyes and breathed in slowly. She chose herself first. She reminded herself that she was enough, with him or without him, that she could walk away and still survive. That love could not be the only reason she stood. Then she opened her eyes, and she chose him too. She reached for his hand and laced her fingers through his. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. Junho looked at their hands. Then he looked at her. And for the first time since she had known him, he smiled fully. No control, no mask. The next morning, the snow had stopped. Pale winter sunlight covered the streets. The world looked washed clean. They stepped outside together. Junho opened the car door for her, and she got in without hesitation. He slid in beside her, and their shoulders touched fully. Neither of them pulled away. Behind them, the snow was already melting. Ahead of them, something new was beginning. If this story touched your heart, don't let this be the end. Like, share, and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories.